Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Some truths do not come suddenly like a storm. They are more like a silent tide that rises quietly without you realizing it, little by little eroding the bank you rely on, until finally you are completely submerged. Liam Hayes feels like his life has been built on such a fragile dam, and right now, it's silently crumbling. Liam, 36 years old, project manager for a mid-sized construction company in Portland. He wasn't one of those radiant characters or the darling of the social scene. His eyes were a deep brown, always serious and down-to-earth. His mannerisms were calm, not exaggerated or fancy, just like those structures he designed, which were practical and safe. Outside of work, he enjoys restoring antique clocks in his garage, a hobby he inherited from his father. The woman was Clara, 32, a marketing manager for a boutique advertising agency. In contrast to Liam's calmness, Clara is more of a dancing flame, full of energy and creativity. She knows how to navigate social situations with just the right smiles and compliments, and how to ignite the warmth in Liam's heart with gentle whispers and sparkling eyes. They met at a friend's party 3 years ago and soon fell in love and started a seemingly perfect relationship. They were planning a fall wedding at a scenic winery in the Columbia River Valley, and everything seemed as perfect as an advertising campaign designed by Clara herself. The problem comes not from external pressures, but from the subtle and twisted force field within the family. First up is Liam's mother, Eleanor Hayes. In her early 60s, once a reasonably successful interior designer, now more of a retired social queen with nothing to do and a passion for controlling the lives of her adult children. She runs a small antique boutique, which is less a business than a platform for her to show off her taste and meet rich wives. Eleanor always wears well-tailored suits and speaks in elegant tones, but often reveals an unintentional contempt for Liam and an almost blind favoritism for her youngest son, Ethan. This eccentricity has been going on for years, since Liam was a little boy. Liam was always so steady, she'd say to the bystanders with a hint of imperceptible regret in her tone as she reached for her glass. Sometimes so steady it was kind of boring. He needs to take a cue from Ethan and live a little more passionately. Ethan Hayes, Liam's brother, 29 years old. A typical product of the social media age, a fitness internet celebrity and personal trainer whose Instagram account is filled with muscular selfies and inspirational chicken soup articles. Ethan is handsome, cocky, and like a proud peacock, he habitually opens his screen wherever he goes, catching everyone's eye, especially Eleanor's. His business is built on his personal brand Peterson Fuel, selling so-called exclusive formulas of protein powder and fitness programs, often showcasing so-called success stories and healthy lifestyles on social media. His apartment, located in the most exclusive area of the city, is lavishly decorated and has a shiny Porsche parked in the garage. The way his mother looked at him, that mixture of pride, adoration, and doting emotion that hit him like a spotlight, sent an unspeakable wave of suffocation through Liam, who stood in the shadows. Growing up, Eleanor's eyes were always on Ethan and oblivious to Liam's accomplishments, whether it was a school event, a sporting event, or a family gathering. Family dinners often turn into Ethan's personal show. "Brother, are you still simmering at that construction company?" Ethan would say to Liam, in a tone that sounded both like concern and bragging rights. "Construction is so old school, you should think about investing in something else. Like me, building a personal brand. That's the future." Change happens without realizing it. At first, it was Eleanor's overenthusiasm for Clara. At first, Liam thought it was just his mother finally accepting his life choices. But soon the enthusiasm seemed a little too much, with a certain unnatural deliberateness. "Clara, darling, you're really getting good taste." Eleanor would take Clara's hand. Unlike Liam, who doesn't know anything about any of this. She would shower Clara with expensive gifts, far beyond the scale of what a future mother-in-law should have. Watches, designer bags, and even jewelry worth thousands of dollars. Eleanor began to frequently invite Clara to go shopping alone, have afternoon tea, and share some woman-to-woman secrets. These events are usually scheduled during times when Liam is working. The relationship he had worked so hard on for years began to take a subtle turn. What's even more disturbing to him is the number of times Clara mentions Ethan. "Ethan helped me adjust my fitness program again today. He's so nice. Ethan said I look good in this dress. You know, Ethan is actually quite thoughtful, not just outwardly honorable. Whenever Clara mentioned Ethan, there was always a special kind of excitement in her voice, a certain glint in her eye that Liam didn't want to think about deeply. Clara's cell phone is also becoming more and more mysterious. At one time, she would casually leave her cell phone on the table, not minding that Liam saw what was on the screen. But now, she always places her cell phone screen face down or simply puts it in her pocket. She would avoid Liam to answer certain calls and walk to the balcony or bathroom, whispering softly. When Liam inadvertently asks, she brushes it off with, "Oh, it's work," or just an old classmate. Her eyes begin to flicker, and she no longer looks Liam straight in the eye, a thin veil shrouding her once honesty. Once the seed of doubt is planted, it takes root like crazy. Liam started paying attention to the fine print. He'd noticed Clara and Ethan exchanging glances at family gatherings, and there was an overpowering understanding and heat there. Clara's laughter was extraordinarily genuine and relaxed, as Ethan recounted some joke that apparently only the two of them knew. He saw the heartfelt, if not a bit of a handful, smile on Eleanor's face as they talked. On a date night with Clara, they were supposed to go to a long-awaited play together. But just before Liam is ready to leave the house, Clara sends a text saying that she suddenly has work to take care of and must cancel the date. Disappointed, Liam decides to go to that play alone, now that the tickets have been purchased. It was at a restaurant near the theater that he overheard Clara, seated in a corner seat with Ethan, and the two were talking intimately, Clara's hand resting gently on Ethan's arm, with that look of adoration familiar to Liam on her face. The defining moment came on a Thursday night. Liam came home 2 hours earlier than scheduled because a project ended early. He wanted to surprise Clara with a cake from her favorite French dessert store. He gently opened the door with his key, wanting to surprise Clara. The living room was dim with no lights on, and only the vague sounds of talking and ambiguous lighting came from the direction of the bedroom. Liam's heart sank, a sense of foreboding coming over him like a tidal wave. Liam softens his steps and walks like a ghost to the bedroom door. The door was not closed tightly, leaving a gap. He heard Ethan's voice. "So, what are you holding back? You know full well how boring it is to be with him. A life of 9 to 5 every day, fixing those antique clocks on the weekends. A life where you can see as far as the eye can see. Do you really want this?" Then Clara's voice. "Ethan, come on, Liam, he's been good to me. He's a good guy, stable, reliable." There was a hint of guilt in her voice, but more than that it seemed to be a hesitation that she couldn't bear to deny. "Good? Just water it on time like a potted plant and forget about it." Ethan let out a soft laugh. "Come on, Clara. You deserve a more interesting life and people who appreciate you more. Mom said the same thing. She thinks we're a better match. You know how much she liked you. She always said you were too talented to be buried in a mediocre housewife role." "Your mother," Clara's voice paused. "She did say that she said Liam was too dull to be amorous. She thinks I'd be wasting my talent and youth with Liam." Liam felt his blood instantly freeze. That his mother, his own mother, would denigrate him like this behind his back and encourage his fiancée to develop a relationship with his brother. Anger and humiliation rolled through his chest like lava. He heard a rustling from inside, the subtle sound of fabric rubbing together, and then Clara's whisper with a gasp. "Ethan, we can't, at least not now. The wedding has been arranged and the guests have all received invitations." "Why not? Afraid he'll find out?" "Don't worry, Mom's got us covered. And, in your heart, you know who you want more. It's me, isn't it? It's by my side that you can truly live and shine, instead of being stuck in a small suburban house and becoming a boring housewife." A few seconds of silence were as long as a century. Liam held his breath, his heart beating like a drum. Then he heard a soft kiss, followed by Clara's almost faintly audible response. "Uh-huh." That one simple syllable completely shatters all of Liam's illusions of love and family. That's enough. That's enough. Liam Hayes' world completely collapsed in that moment, but his spine did not bend. Instead of rushing in, he retreated silently to the living room and placed the box of cake, which had been a symbol of sweetness, on the shoebox by the door. The cake was beautifully wrapped with a little ribbon that said, "For my favorite Clara." The irony of it all seems so great today. Then he turned around and left the home that had once been filled with love and hope, but was now nothing but betrayal and lies. He walked out into the street, the evening wind blowing in his face with a biting chill. But he didn't shiver. His insides were filled with an icy determination like no other. He doesn't get hysterical. He doesn't give up on himself. He doesn't cry like a victim. No, he wanted revenge, a calm, well-planned revenge. He pulled out his cell phone and found a dusty name in his address book, Marcus Vance. A private investigator who helped him with a difficult business dispute a few years ago, clean-cut, expensive, but absolutely reliable. Marcus, it's me, Liam Hayes. Liam's voice was awfully calm, as if he were discussing the weather instead of his shattered life. Liam, it's been a long time. How can I help you? I need you to do me a favor. Check out two people, my brother, Ethan Hayes, and my fiancée, Clara, and my mother, Eleanor Hayes, her boutique, her clients, her accounts. Check them out too. Understood. It's going to be a full-blown investigation. Cost. Money is not an issue, Liam interrupted. I just want results. The sooner the better, and the more detailed the better. No matter how much it costs, I want to know the whole truth. Hanging up the phone, Liam stood still, letting the hustle and bustle of the city pass him by. Eleanor, Ethan, Clara, none of them can run away. He would carefully plan each step, like designing a complex architectural project, making sure that every aspect was precise. They lit the fire with their own hands, so let them be reduced to nothing in the flames. This revenge would be the most sophisticated and coldest project of his life. Liam didn't go home that night. He found an ordinary motel in the center of town and stayed there. Early the next morning, he received a text from Clara. Liam, where were you last night? The phone isn't answering, and I'm worried. The message was accompanied by a worried emoticon at the end, which seemed so hypocritical. Liam looked at the text on the screen, and the corner of his mouth curved in an icy curve. Worried? Maybe they're worried about their scandalous story being exposed too soon. He didn't reply. A few hours later, Clara's call came through. Liam let it ring until it hung up automatically. Then there was Eleanor's call, again ignored by him. The phone vibrated a dozen times, but Liam didn't even look at it. In the meantime, he contacted a veteran divorce attorney, Alan Parker, one of Portland's best divorce attorneys, known for handling high-asset, complex divorces. So, what do you hope to do about it? Parker asked, his eyes sharp as he held up his gold-rimmed glasses. I want her to pay. Liam replied, his voice quiet but firm. I want to keep as much of the joint property on my side as possible. I want her to understand the price of betrayal. He sent Clara a brief text. We need to talk. Something about our future. Meet me at the Alley Cafe downtown tonight at 7. He deliberately chose a public place to avoid any out-of-control scenes at home. At 7 p.m., Liam showed up at the promised cafe on time. Clara arrived 10 minutes late and rushed in, looking a little haggard, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the panic and redness under her eyes. Liam, what's wrong with you? I didn't come back all night last night, and I was scared. Clara starts complaining as soon as she sits down, trying to take the moral high ground. Liam didn't say anything, just looked at her quietly, his gaze sharp as a scalpel. Scared of what? Afraid I'll find something. Clara's face changed instantly, like she was doused in ice water. I don't understand what you're talking about. Yeah? Do I need to remind you of that? For example, last night, in my bedroom, the conversation you had with my dear brother Ethan? Clara's face turned as white as paper all of a sudden, and she jerked her head up with unbelievable shock and fear in her eyes. You heard me? Hear it loud and clear. Including how my dear mother, who plotted behind the scenes, encouraged you into my brother's arms. Clara opened her mouth as if to argue, but ultimately just opened and closed it a few times in vain. Liam, it's not what you think. It's Ethan. He's been pestering me. And your mom. She's been saying bad things about you. That you don't care about me. That I'm wasting my time with you. That's enough, Clara. I don't want to hear these lies and excuses. The truth is, you betrayed me, with my own brother, at my mother's instigation. That's enough. So what do you want then? We're done. The wedding is canceled. You're moving out of my apartment in a week. My attorney will contact your attorney for follow-up legal matters. No, Liam, you can't do this to me. Is this the end of our relationship after all these years? Give me a chance, Liam. Please, I can explain. I can change. I can cut him off completely. Emotions? When you and Ethan were flirting in my bed, why didn't you think about our relationship? How could you have thought about our relationship when you were content to accept expensive gifts from my mother, listen to her denigrate me sentence by sentence, and step by step towards my brother? With that, Liam turned on his heel and walked away, his pace steady, not looking back at the pale, shivering woman slumped in her chair. The first step, cutting ties, has been accomplished. The next step is to gather ammunition, deploy firepower, and prepare for war. Under the night sky of Portland, revenge, officially, kicks in. Once the gears of vengeance begin to turn, they grind through with a cold and precise rhythm, never stopping until they reach their goal. Liam Hayes waited patiently, hidden in the shadows like a seasoned hunter, calmly watching his prey step into his carefully laid trap. One of the first to feel the pressure was Eleanor Hayes. A few weeks later, Liam vaguely learns through a seemingly offhand lunchtime chat from an old classmate who works in the city's finance department that the tax department has launched a surprise tax audit of Eleanor's antique boutique. According to the classmate's description, that morning, several tax inspectors in suits with serious expressions suddenly appeared in front of the boutique, presented a search warrant and detailed investigation documents, and demanded access to all books, sales records, bank statements, and computer data. Eleanor was clearly unprepared and was disorganized on the spot. At the same time, several wealthy clients who had trusted Eleanor with large sums of money to buy high-return antiques or participate in insider investments began to take action. They received anonymous packages containing copies of emails in which Eleanor had colluded with suppliers to inflate prices, as well as screenshots of chats in which she had privately mocked her customers for being stupid and expensive. These wealthy wives have joined forces to hire a team of Portland's most skilled attorneys in financial fraud cases to prepare a class action lawsuit against Eleanor. In time, Eleanor became infamous in that circle of rich people she'd been running for years. The elegant social queen image she had carefully maintained for decades began to rapidly crumble. They friends she was usually so close to now avoided her like the plague. Eleanor called Liam a few times, and the tone of her voice changed from an initial questioning with a sense of superiority to one of exasperation, which eventually morphed into near-hysterical cries. "Liam, did you do this? Why are you doing this to me? I'm your mother. How can you be so cruel?" Liam finally hit the answer button on the third time he got a call from her. "Mother? When I needed your support and trusted you the most, you didn't hesitate to stab me in the back, encouraged my fiancée to fornicate with my brother, and even plotted how to divide my property after I was abandoned. Now, do you think there's any mother-son bond left between us?" That thing was Clara herself. Eleanor tries to be defensive again. "I just thought she deserved better. I just wanted her to see more possibilities. I didn't think she would actually do that and betray you. It's her. It's her who doesn't love you enough to cherish you. It's not my fault, dash." "Enough," Liam interrupted her coldly. "You planted the cause with your own hands. Now it's time for you to taste the bitter fruit. Enjoy this, you deserve it." After saying that, he directly hung up the phone and completely blacklisted her number. Shortly afterward, news came that her boutique had to declare bankruptcy and close its doors due to serious tax problems and a class action lawsuit from customers, which broke its financial chain and soon made it unsustainable. The store's antiques were auctioned off cheaply to pay off some of the debts and fines. The tax authorities have also launched an in-depth investigation into her personal assets, freezing a number of bank accounts and assets that may have been involved in illegal gains. Some say she was seen breaking down and crying on the spot at an affordable supermarket because her credit card had been declined, screaming and cursing unimaginatively at the cashier and those around her, and was eventually asked to leave by security. Having settled his mother's side, Liam turns the focus of his vengeance precisely on Ethan. Ethan's career as a fitness web celebrity is on the surface looking like it's in full swing. With a consistently growing number of followers on social media and various offers for business partnerships, Liam has carefully categorized and organized the exhaustive evidence Marcus Vance has gathered about Ethan's use of inferior protein powder, falsification of client cases, tax evasion, and inappropriate relationships with multiple female trainees. He began by anonymously providing key information about Ethan's use of inferior and possibly even unlabeled, harmful protein powders, including third-party test reports on the product's ingredients, background checks on the supplier, and several internal emails showing that Ethan was aware of the product's problems and yet demanded that it continue to be sold to a veteran investigative reporter in health and fitness who is influential locally and nationally. David Miller. Miller showed great interest in this revelation and immediately assembled a team to begin a more in-depth and comprehensive independent investigation. Almost at the same time, Liam sent Ethan's years of tax evasion through the establishment of shell companies, false expenditures, concealment of large amounts of income, and the use of offshore accounts to transfer assets to the IRS Criminal Investigation Department through encrypted channels anonymously through a well-organized report accompanied by a large number of bank water flow and transfer records. Immediately thereafter, Liam utilized a newly registered, completely anonymous social media account and began strategically blowing up and directing public opinion in the comments sections of well-known fitness forums, consumer review sites, and Ethan's own social media accounts. Does anyone know the exact source of the ingredients in Peterson Fuel Protein Powder? It feels a little off. Why do I feel like Coach Ethan's recent comparison photo of that trainee losing 30 pounds in 6 weeks looks like I've seen a similar one with another coach? The posts and comments were like stones thrown into calm water, quickly sending ripples after ripples. He also contacted, through anonymous emails, several female cadets who had been sexually harassed by Ethan using his authority, and even threatened and pestered after the relationship ended. The women soon formed a victim support group through private contacts. The results of the multi-pronged approach are significant and rapid. A few days later, investigative reporter David Miller's in-depth story was published simultaneously on the website and front page of a nationally recognized media outlet with the punchy headline, "Shadows Beneath the Halo, Fitness Internet Sensation Ethan Hayes' Fraudulent Empire, Shoddy Products, False Advertising, and Systematic Exploitation." The report is thousands of words long and richly illustrated, disclosing in detail the falsification of ingredients and potential health risks of Ethan brand protein powders, citing the analysis of several medical and nutritional experts. The story was like dropping a heavy bomb and immediately caused a tsunami of reactions on the internet. It has been reprinted and commented on by major news portals, social media platforms, and fitness and consumer rights bloggers. On Twitter and Instagram, hashtags like hashtag Ethan Hayes fraud, hashtag Peterson Fuel scam shot up the trending list in just a few hours, sparking millions of discussions and retweets. The comments section of Ethan's Instagram and Facebook accounts instantly fell, completely flooded with angry consumers, former loyal fans, and sniffy eaters. Comments of all sorts of abuse, accusations, demands for refunds, and legal action were all over the place, and the speed at which they were swiped was dizzying. Immediately following this, major well-known sports brands, nutrition companies, and fitness equipment vendors that have worked with Ethan have issued statements announcing the immediate termination of all partnerships with Ethan and his brands, and demanding that he compensate the brands for the damages they have suffered as a result of his negative image. The agency he was signed to also quickly terminated his contract and drew a line in the sand. A formal notice of tax investigation from the IRS arrived at his luxury downtown condominium on schedule, with a sternly worded request for all of his detailed financial records, bank statements, business contracts, and tax certificates for the past 5 years, and a clear message that he was being criminally investigated for suspected aggravated tax evasion. Ethan was in a complete panic, in a state of unprecedented panic and despair. He attempted to post a carefully prepared video on social media, in which his eyes were red and his voice choked with sobs, explaining that he had been maliciously set up and that his nearest and dearest, alluding to Liam, had stabbed him in the back out of jealousy. However, in the face of overwhelming evidence and victim testimonies, his flawed and insincere performance has instead provoked more disgust and ridicule. The last straw came from the women who had been harassed and victimized by him. With anonymous support from Liam and the help of a prominent feminist attorney, they formed a formal victims coalition, bravely chose to come forward under their real names, jointly opened up to the media about Ethan's long history of misconduct using his position and power, and formally filed a class action lawsuit in the courts seeking substantial financial damages and a public apology. Ethan's so-called business empire fell apart like dominoes in a matter of weeks. The company's accounts were frozen, its products were completely taken off the shelves, and it was under pressure from snowflakes of consumer refund requests and suppliers seeking payment. The shiny Porsche that once symbolized his success was forcibly repossessed by the bank for defaulting on a loan. He has had to sell all his luxury items, designer clothes, and even gym equipment to barely pay his mounting legal bills and maintain basic living. Finally, it was Clara's turn. In contrast to the devastating, public execution that was used against Eleanor and Ethan, Liam's revenge against Clara is more personal and more precise and brutal. His goal is clear, not only to make her pay legally and financially, but to completely destroy the sense of security, vanity, and illusions of a better future on which she depends. Alan Parker, the top divorce attorney Liam hired, was perfect in the courtroom. He skillfully transformed the results of Marcus Vance's undercover investigations into a legally impeccable body of evidence that was admissible in court. Attorney Parker captured the key point. He presented extensive evidence that Clara had a substantial record of improper joint spending with Ethan during the marriage, spending that directly tapped into her joint assets with Liam. Most damagingly, Parker presented the judge with several key technically processed and authenticated recordings at just the right time, clearly demonstrating that Clara not only actively participated in the incestuous relationship with Ethan, but also expressed contempt and calculation for Liam on several occasions in her conversations with Eleanor, even discussing how she would help Ethan develop his career after the marriage, using Liam's resources. Career by utilizing Liam's resources. The trial was full of tension and drama. The attorneys Clara hired tried to portray her as a naive and innocent victim who was seduced and manipulated by both the shrewd and powerful Ethan and the controlling Eleanor. However, Parker's attorneys presented a series of hard evidence that, like a heavy hammer, crushed Clara's defense over and over again. The final verdict was devastating for Clara. In her judgment, the judge made it clear that the principle of equity and compensation for the party not at fault, Liam, must be taken into account in the division of property. Taking into account the fact that Clara's infidelity during the marriage directly contributed to the breakdown of the marriage, as well as bad faith acts such as maliciously transferring and squandering the joint property and giving false testimony in the proceedings. As a result, not only did Clara not receive a single penny of alimony, but she received a tiny fraction of the division of real estate, cars, stocks, and other higher value assets that she had jointly purchased during the marriage. To add insult to injury, the judge also ruled that she would be responsible for a significant portion of the exorbitant attorney's fees paid by Liam in this lawsuit. The crushing financial blow is only the first step, followed by social death. When Ethan's scandal erupted, it was inevitable that Clara, his former close companion, would be badly affected. Several local tabloids and gossip sites, in an effort to rub Ethan's nose in it, dug deeper into her flirtatious relationship with him, even publishing several blurry photos of them going in and out of upscale hotels together late at night and behaving intimately. Her name became closely associated with insulting labels such as cheater's mistress, marital cheater, and gold digger. The boutique ad agency she works for was known for its open atmosphere and friendly relationships, but after the scandalous revelations about her and Ethan, everything changed. Clients began to express concerns about the projects she was responsible for, and even outright demanded that the person in charge be replaced. Within the company, co-workers who were once on good terms with her began to deliberately alienate her. Under great pressure and shame, she eventually had to choose to resign voluntarily, or rather, was decently persuaded to leave. Having lost her job, Clara tries to find it again. She'd submitted countless resumes to advertising agencies and marketing departments in Portland and surrounding cities, but her bad reputation seemed to have spread quickly through the industry's information networks. Either the resume sinks into the sea, nowhere to be found, or it is politely rejected in the interview session, the other party's eyes always with a hint of probing and guarded. The loss of her stable, well-paying job, her soon-to-be married partner, the financial security that had been within her reach, and the circle of friends that had once supported her confidence and vanity. Clara's life is thrown into a terrible mess and despair for a short period of time. The court-ordered division of property left her virtually naked, and what little savings she had were quickly depleted in paying attorneys' fees and maintaining basic living expenses. She had to give up her previously rented, high-rent apartment in a trendy downtown neighborhood and move to a rundown old apartment building on the edge of the city in a noisy, chaotic environment. She puts her foot down and tries to reach out to some of her former friends for help, even if it's just to borrow some money or refer her to a temporary job. But those so-called girlfriends who used to send her expensive gifts at her birthday parties, go shopping together on weekends, and share all sorts of gossip and secrets, are now either not answering her calls or using all sorts of excuses to shirk their duties. In order to survive, she had to start working various odd jobs, as a waitress in a crowded coffee shop, putting up with the customers' complaints and the boss's harshness, as a cashier in a large supermarket chain, and washing dishes in the back kitchen of a cheap fast food restaurant, where her hands were soaked with detergent to the point that they turned white and peeled off. Once, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, after taking care of some work-related business in the city center, Liam happened to pass a fast food restaurant with a cheap sale advertised in the window. He unintentionally glanced into the store, but his gaze froze momentarily. Through the rain and grease-covered glass window, he saw Clara. She was wearing an obviously ill-fitting, whitewashed and pilled gray uniform. Her hair was tied casually behind her head with the simplest of black hairbands. A few strands of messy, broken hair were stuck to her forehead, and her face was unpowdered, making her look unusually pale and tired. She was keeping her head down, laboriously wiping a greasy dining table with a dirty rag, her movements mechanical and numb. Just then, Clara seems to sense something and looks up, her eyes meeting Liam right outside the window. The moment she saw Liam, she froze, and the rag in her hand fell to the floor with a thud. Extremely complex emotions instantly flashed through her eyes: shock, shame, disbelief, deep remorse, and perhaps a remnant, unrealistic hope. Liam just glanced at her blandly, no ripples in his eyes, as if he were seeing a completely insignificant stranger or a rock on the side of the road. Then he withdrew his gaze expressionlessly, adjusted his umbrella, and walked straight past the fast food restaurant's entrance without the slightest pause or gesture. He could clearly feel Clara's gaze, a mixture of despair and humiliation, following his back until he disappeared around the corner. But he didn't look back, not one step. After a few months, Liam's life gradually regained its calm, but this calm was very different from the past, with a kind of precipitation and resilience after the storm. He moved completely out of the apartment, filled with sweet memories and ultimately painful betrayals, and bought a new condo in downtown Portland near the Willamette River with a great view and a modern, minimalist design. He took it upon himself to make his new home cozy and classy, with an air of his own. He is still a hard-working and reliable project manager in that construction company, and has even been recognized and promoted by the company as the deputy head of the department because of his excellent leadership and decisive decision-making skills in several recent large-scale projects, where he successfully dealt with several extremely difficult technical problems and client disputes. But he's no longer the good old boy who used to be mild-mannered, introverted, and even a little weak and conflict-avoidant in some ways. He began spending more time with his father, Arthur Hayes. Arthur, shortly after Eleanor's scandal had completely erupted and discredited her, filed for divorce from her with remarkable calmness. One might even say relief, ending a marriage that had long seemed divorced and repressed. He sold the large house he had shared with Eleanor for many years, moved to a scenic, slow-paced suburban town near the Columbia River Valley, rented a house with a small yard, picked up his youthful hobby of painting, and began a new life that was truly his own, one of serenity and calm. Liam has also begun to try, with a more cautious and mature mindset, to reach out to new people and reopen his life. He met Sophie Dubois, a talented, independent, and bright architect, at an in-house architectural design seminar. Sophie is around her early 30s, has brown eyes full of intelligence and warmth, is passionate about architectural design, and has her own unique and deep insights into sustainable urban development. Instead of falling in love as quickly as Liam and Clara did in the beginning, they began to touch in a slower, more natural way. The smoke of vengeance had long since cleared completely, leaving behind only a wretched ruin and a few shattered lives. Eleanor was sentenced to substantial fines and community service for multiple charges of tax fraud and financial fraud. And although he was spared jail time due to his advanced age and poor health, almost all of the property in his name was used to pay off debts and fines. She was forced to move from the upscale neighborhood that once symbolized her social status into a government-provided low-cost senior citizen apartment in a bleak old age. Ethan, on the other hand, declared total bankruptcy and is burnt out in multiple civil lawsuits and IRS collection proceedings. In order to pay part of the compensation and legal fees, he had to sell all of his personal belongings that he could. Eventually, he disappeared from public view and no one knew where he went. Much later, a colleague of Liam's who was on a business trip out of town happened to mention that he seemed to have seen a stooped, slow-moving janitor at a highway gas station in some remote town, much like the red-hot fitness internet sensation Ethan Hayes back in the day. As for Clara, there was less and less news about her, and eventually she disappeared completely. Some say she couldn't handle the failure and humiliation of being in Portland and eventually left the city for some big city on the East Coast or in the Midwest to try to make a fresh start. But no one knows how she's doing, and not many people seem to care anymore. There are also more reliable rumors that she ended up back in the small Midwestern town where she grew up, living with her aging parents and eking out a living by working odd jobs at a local grocery store that had a slow business. Liam stood in front of the wide floor-to-ceiling windows of his new apartment, a glass of amber whiskey in his hand, overlooking the city that flowed beneath him. As the night wore on, the Willamette River reflected the twinkling neon on both banks, sparkling like broken stars. Deep down, he didn't feel the ecstasy or excitement of a successful revenge in the traditional sense, only an almost exhausted calm after the dust had settled. He had been pushed into the dark abyss by a coalition of those closest to him, but instead of sinking, he chose to fight back in his own way, calmly and decisively, and ultimately rose again from above the rubble. Outside the window, the city is still bustling, neon signs flashing, and thousands of people are still chasing their dreams, desires, and lives. But Liam's mind, at the moment, was one of unprecedented peace and clarity. He knows that whatever challenges and storms await him in the future, he is no longer the Liam Hayes of the past. He is stronger, tougher, and more aware than ever before. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.